Just popping in before we start because this conversation really captures where I'm heading this season. I sat down with Gabi Varga and we get into something I see over and over again in my work. People doing all of the quote right things for their health, working out, staying active, pushing themselves, but doing it from a nervous system that does not actually feel safe. And when that's the starting point, it can quietly reinforce the very symptoms that they're trying to fix. We talk about overtraining, dissociation, mind muscle connection, but underneath all of it is something much bigger. That is the relationship between your nervous system and your body, how your environment cues your system before your mind makes sense of it, and how those patterns get reinforced over time. Gabi shares her own story of moving from disconnection and burnout into a much more embodied way of living and training. And it's such a clear example of what happens when we stop trying to override the body and start listening to it instead. So many of the symptoms that people are experiencing are not structural problems, they're patterns in the nervous system, patterns that are actually workable when we slow down and start to listen. If this conversation resonates, that's exactly what we will be exploring in an upcoming workshop that I am teaching called Your Body Isn't Broken, Understanding Neuroplastic Pain and Symptoms. And that's going to be on May 20th, 2026 from 7 to 8 p.m. And I will put the link to register in the show notes. It will be recorded for people who have registered and available for a very short time after the workshop. So if you can't make it and you're interested, register anyway. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to the Spiritually Curious Therapist, where science, spirit, and the self come together in the art of healing. I'm Jody Silverman, psychotherapist, Reiki master, and fellow seeker. Here we explore how presence, compassion, and nervous system wisdom helps us reconnect with the heart, the body, and the soul. Welcome back to the Spiritually Curious Therapist. Today, I am very excited for our guest. We have with us Gabi Varga, and Gabi is a trauma-informed personal trainer. She's been a fitness trainer for 22 years, and she started her journey as a group fitness instructor in her home country, Hungary. She continued that path in Montreal. Later, she became a personal trainer after moving to her current city, Vancouver. Her own experience with overtraining, unhealthy relationship with fitness, and trauma put her on the trauma-informed path. Decided to pivot her angle and help people who put their health and longevity first by gentle approach to movement and fitness, going back to the basics and building a strong foundation. I am so excited to hear more about this, Gabi, because what I find in my practice is a lot of people who are physically active and into fitness, but in a way that may not be the best for their health and their nervous system and in their mental health as well. So Gabi helps people who understand that trauma affects the physical and mental health, and they see the benefit of improving connection with the body while they value safe space, autonomy, and a supportive environment. Gabi learned as much as she enjoys training clients online and meeting them from all over the world. She loves to offer in-person sessions in her community in the North Shore of Vancouver. And when she's not working, she appreciates downtime, spends time with her sweet dog and friends, or you may see her cycling. Welcome, Gabi.
Hi, Jody. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for being here. So why don't we just start with you telling us your story? Because I know that's a big part of how you came to do the work that you do.
Yeah. So I'll start after leaving my ex-husband because that's when trauma became very apparent. I may circle back to my younger years, but I feel that's where the big picture really started to form. So I left him when I was 32, 10 years ago. And because I kept being sick, I felt I wasn't happy in the marriage, and I moved to Canada for him. So that was a big deal for me. It's a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
shift. I only knew how to live in Canada with him, but I was so unhappy that I could not see another way out. So I left him And that's when the real trauma started to show up, because I never knew what inner work was. I didn't know about nervous system regulation. I didn't know any of the stuff that I live and breathe now.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the things that I knew, and that wasn't really healthy. So I started dating. I never really explored that much in my earlier years because I had been in a relationship, like one to another, going from one to another. And so I put this very outgoing persona on that already lived within me because of the gym I was working at. We had to be loud, we had to greet clients. That's part of me, but it got amplified. And I started to seek for, not started, actually, that had been within me, started to seek validation, outside, external validation from men. And all I knew was how to train my body, how to look hot, how to do the fun things that actually made me go, like, it was a slippery slope to just, I call it unsafe dating. So I was overtraining because I wanted to look good, but I didn't know at that time how dysfunctional my body was. And this will be interesting to explore later when you said that your clients work out, but it might not be the best for them the way they do it. But that's all they know, right? They know what they do what they know. And that's what I did too. I did what I knew. And so unsafe dating and this trauma pattern started to play out. I was smoking, drinking to numb my feelings while I was presenting this happy, healthy life. And I was supposed to be healthy. And I started to see that, oh, I'm a facade. I'm pretending to be happy, healthy while I'm hiding and drinking, smoking. And so that was a couple of years. And then I started to seek help, but not in the somatic world. First, it was talk therapy, and it didn't work for me. I started to ask questions. I feel for a lot of people who get on the healing journey, they start to question their status quo. And I started to ask these questions like, why? This doesn't feel right. I got into another unhealthy relationship because I hadn't done the work. But simultaneously, I found somatic therapy. I kept working as an independent personal trainer because I wasn't happy at my gym anymore. Because it made me play out the old patterns. And so then somatic therapy came into play. That started to help me advocate for myself. Autonomy, agency came into the picture, and I started to pivot and do more trauma-informed training with my clients. However, I didn't know what I was doing. I was using the tools that I learned from my somatic therapist. And eventually I found the course that was called Trauma-Informed Personal Training, or training course. So I took that online during COVID. I was so grateful that this could happen. And I started to connect the dots. Oh yeah, that's freeze response, flight response. Of course, I read up on all the things, but the picture became, you have the puzzle pieces, and all of a sudden the picture starts to form. And then I started to call myself a trauma-informed personal trainer. At that time, I already had my business established, just pivoted a little bit to make it more trauma-informed. And eventually I started to recognize that my relationship wasn't healthy. The things that I could achieve in my work with my clients, those tools weren't working in my relationship. So I started to question a lot of things. And eventually 3 years ago, I decided to part ways. And it has taken me 3 years. Like now, finally, I'm getting a good understanding who I am as a person, what I like to do. So I got rid of the persona part of me, and just recognizing the roles that I have in different places, different parts of my life. And yeah, it's been quite interesting. But a lot now, circling back to the earlier years, the reason why everything played out the way it did, because how I was raised, what I saw in my family. So if I had autonomy, if I had agency, if I had a healthier outlook on life at an early age, probably this would have been a very different story later on. But this is my story, and I'm really grateful that I was able to come out on the other end, not to get swallowed up.
Yeah, because we often do. And you're so right. There's so many layers to this, but our early childhood experiences set the stage.
Mm.
And our first relationships, which are typically with our parents or our primary caregivers, are the ones that wire our nervous system for the way that we show up in the world in relationship to other people. And if those are not safe enough, we will play that out over and over again. In the psychotherapy world, we talk about attachment.
Yeah.
And we can have safe attachment. It doesn't mean that we don't have relational patterns that need to be addressed or that we don't engage in behaviors that aren't always the healthiest or the best for us.
Yes.
And I think that's a big differentiator that we have to start looking at for folks. And exercise is one of those things. I'm finding over and over again that a lot of the folks that I work with, especially people who are suffering from chronic pain, chronic illness in particular, they either have a history or a current life of pretty intense exercise of some sort. And oftentimes, as you said, they are overtaxing their system and not realizing that it is actually reinforcing the hypervigilance in their nervous system versus grounding them or bringing them into a safe space. This came up in a conversation I was having earlier today, and you alluded to it, and that is that culturally we see our bodies, the value that we see in our bodies is attached to the way our body looks, not necessarily the way it's functioning.
Thank you for saying that. That's so important and beautifully nuanced, because a lot of there's, especially in the fitness world, there's a lot of unhealthy patterns there, and I've seen it with personal trainers, clients. So yeah, it's important to talk about the nuances that and bring it to the table. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for doing the work that you do because you were in that world for a really long time. Was there, let me back up for a minute. So you mentioned that it wasn't until you found somatic therapy that you started to really start to feel a shift. Can you say more about what somatic therapy was like for you? Because I don't know that everybody knows what that means or what that is.
Soma means body. We know talk therapy, that we talk about our feelings, but talk therapy can re-traumatize us. And that's what I tried. That's what I found. It wasn't working for me. I was triggering my psychologist. I'm like, this is not, I didn't have the words for it, but I knew that this is not how it should be. And then I started to dig. So soma means body. So we work with the body. I talk like I'm the therapist, but as a trainer too. And I started finding YouTube videos. And of course, there's all kinds of parts of somatic therapy. And my wonderful lady, she in her 70s, she uses different things. She's learned all kinds of things. So I just use the umbrella term somatic therapy when I talk about working with my somatic therapist. But technically grounding ourselves, how to be present, how not to leave the body. And I'm sure we are going to talk about dissociation because that's the mind body connection, mind muscle connection. That will be a very interesting piece to talk about later. But how to stay with emotions. And myself, I consider myself an empath and or highly emotional person. And we shut down our emotions when we are not seen by our parents or caregivers or anyone really. And it's really easy to leave the body. Somatic therapy helps you to stay with the uncomfortable sensations in the body. So we create capacity But obviously there's many layers to this, and I'm just pulling one out that really applies to my own work as well as a personal trainer. But how to be present, how to ground ourselves, how to feel our feet, how to feel, right now I'm sitting on the ground, how to feel my sit bones. I'm feeling the couch against my back, and stay with the sensation, how to slow down our speech. I'm a very go person, but I'm noticing embodiment, how we embody this work, then we can actually slow down and notice the different stages, the regulation, the dysregulation. And I want to highlight that as it's not about being regulated all the time. Like I swear a lot. I'm very expressive, but I know now how to go back to regulation. I still get dysregulated. I'm just not staying stuck in that cycle.
In your experience, why is it important that we stay connected with our body? Like, why can't we just go through life dissociated, disconnected, and not feeling our feelings? What's the problem?
I call it the autopilot mode, just going through the motions. There's many reasons. If we are not connected to our bodies from a personal training standpoint, it's really easy to get injured during a session because you're mentally and physically not present. You're somewhere else. You're still brewing about what the conversation that you had with your boss, and you feel really upset about it. So injury can happen so much easier. That's one thing. And fulfillment, feeling happy. Okay, burnout. That's what happened to me. It was so interesting. I'm going to go back to my own life story that before leaving Hungary and moving to Montreal as a group fitness instructor, I was doing a lot of group classes, teaching one place to another, going all the time, and I felt burnt out. It came very handy that my ex-husband, then boyfriend, appeared and saved me and moved to Montreal and started to learn English, started to find my community. Then I became a group fitness instructor again. And I found myself in the hamster wheel again because I loved my job, but the deep fulfillment that's coming from this inner work that we do wasn't there. So it came again very handy that my ex-husband got a job in Vancouver, so we moved again. But starting all over is so tiring. You cannot, technically, I was running away from my issues, and I always had a good excuse why not to look deeper because I didn't have the capacity. And then the burnout really happened after leaving him and just burning the candle on both ends. Like, unsafe dating, overtraining, because I was really deep into my pattern. So technically, what I truly believe is the burnout, it's going to make us avoid life with fulfillment, and there's meaning. While when we are in survival mode, the autopilot takes over, there's the meaning is not as significant or not there at all.
I think that's so powerful. I want to reflect it back to you and make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So let me know if this makes sense.
I love that.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is when we are not embodied and just going through life on autopilot, meaning we're not connecting with ourselves, we're not connecting with our body, we're not feeling our feelings, we also don't get to feel fulfillment or joy or happiness. And when we don't get to feel those things, we're just reinforcing this like lack of purpose, which from my perspective also connects very deeply to spirituality.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so powerful, Gabi. Like we can't experience spirituality without being embodied. You just kind of laid this right down in my lap. You're like, yes, that's exactly it. And so I really want people to hear that because if you're feeling burnout, if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling a lack of joy, chances are you're not embodied. I want to pause here for just a second because what she's describing isn't really about fitness. It's about what happens when we're disconnected from ourselves and trying to cope with that.
If I may, back in 2020, I found myself very spiritual. I went to Bali, did the yoga retreat, did all that things that I thought I had to do because I was still running. The autopilot was still running. And it all started with spirituality but I started to recognize that there's a lot deeper. There's a lot of pseudo spirituality, pseudo healing happening these days. But in 2020, when COVID hit, I did an online live coaching course and we talked about values. And I'm like, I had such a hard time because I was not connected. I was pulling threads from my earlier years. Yeah, trustworthiness, things like that are important in my life because that's what I got from my parents. But my parents were on autopilot too. So it was an external thing. It wasn't internalized. Mm-hmm. And the purpose that you mentioned, Jody, that's coming as we are healing, as we are getting more regulated, we are connecting to our purpose. And spirituality means very different to me now compared to back in 2018, 2020, when this whole thing started for me. So and if someone is listening and they say, I don't know what my purpose, that's okay. You're already questioning. So just see what aligns with you, and then eventually the answers will appear.
Yeah, and just to reinforce all of this is that because a lot of people will say, I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. And what's becoming more and more clear is one way to start is to come back to your body. And I was just talking to somebody earlier, actually another interview I was doing, and what she said, which I really resonate with but hadn't thought of, is the first place to start is your breath. Yeah. Just pay attention to how you're breathing.
So through my own experience, breath is a very tricky thing. When we are on autopilot, there's deep trauma patterns, breath is not available. So if breath work can be very agitating or dysregulating for some people. And again, there's no one size fits all. There's like a wide spectrum of this. And for some people, it's easier. Breath work is, oh yeah, this is the best thing ever. For me, it took me years to able to connect to it. And just if someone feels, oh, this should be easier, just start where you are at.
Yes.
You don't have to, just notice that, it's restricted. I'm breathing through my chest and everyone is telling me that I'm supposed to be breathing through my stomach. It's okay. It's okay. So we don't have to force what's supposed to look like.
100%. I'm so glad that you said that. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It's just, we're just starting where we're starting.
Yeah.
And it's all okay. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love that you had your own experience of that as well, because I hear that a lot too. And that just goes to what we were talking about earlier in terms of all of these things that are out there in the world right now, and whether it's a yoga retreat or a couch to 5K or strength training or breath work, one size does not fit all, and there are different ways to approach these doors, and taking the time to really get to know what feels right for you and doing it nice and slowly is really important, because too much too fast can be very re-traumatizing.
Yes. And I remember I listened to some of your podcast interviews from earlier to prepare for our interview, and one of the wonderful ladies you guys talked about bite-sized pieces, and that's so important. Like in my own work as a personal trainer, someone who's really deep in their trauma patterns, doing too much too soon can be re-traumatizing, can push the body further into freeze response, shut down. So it's important to just, okay, recognize our capacity that there's going to be days when we can do more. Sometimes focusing on one breath is absolutely enough.
Yes, yes. Okay, let's talk about mind-muscle connection. So tell us what that actually is. When we talk about mind-muscle connection, what does that mean?
I'm going to say what it means to me. I learned through my own experience or experiences with my clients, and that's what sticks instead of reading a book. Mind muscle connection is how well we are connected to our muscles. And that's the thing that a lot of personal trainers take it for granted. They think that, oh, if the trainer, let's pretend I'm them. Oh, I know how to engage my glutes. I know how to engage my bicep. That means everyone knows how to do that. And that's a very limited way to see things. And the only reason I know that's not that simple because I've gone through it. So for a lot of clients, many clients of mine, we have to create that. We have to improve the neural pathways between the mind and the muscle that, okay, we can connect to it, we can feel it. And it wasn't a given for me for a long time because I have a lot of dysfunction, joint dysfunction that I was born with, but I could pretend that everything was okay until it wasn't because of overtraining. This is where I think we could talk about dissociation. But do you feel I answered to the question what the mind muscle connection is?
Yeah, so I love the way that you used neural pathways because I think that's really important. So it's the way in which we attend to our muscles in our bodies.
Yeah.
And many of us don't have those neural pathways because we never really had to, or we were
Mm-hmm.
never really taught how to consciously
Yeah.
form them because we just move through the world the way we move
Yeah.
through the world. And we are a society that tends to dissociate, especially in this day and time where we have phones that we're constantly looking at and we're watching things instead of doing things, and so we're
Mm-hmm.
not moving around as much as we used to. And I think a lot about functional strength too
Yeah.
and functional movement. Sometimes you're working out so that you can like pick the grocery bags up off the floor or carry your grandchild, or there are reasons why we train our bodies other than to look good.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's important to know too. I'm sorry that kind of went off on a
Oh
tangent.
no, it really connects to everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah, so mind muscle connection is strengthening those neural pathways between our prefrontal cortex, what we pay attention to, and the way our muscles contract and work in our body. Is that
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So now let's talk about dissociation, which is the state that we're often in when we're not paying attention to those things.
Yes. I remember vividly, I was doing step ups years and years ago when in that phase when after leaving my ex-husband and overtraining, I'm doing step ups and I recognize, oh, I'm supposed to be feeling my glute, but I don't. And it was a big realization, also scary that, oh, and what the fitness world talks about, like it's a given that we feel those things, and it's not a given. So dissociation happens through being stuck in a trauma response. A lot of people explain it as I left my body, I'm seeing myself from the outside, I'm over the ceiling, on the ceiling watching myself. And that happens to a lot of SA people. And I've had clients with the SA, and that's a very typical thing because you have to leave your body. Otherwise, the pain is so much that you cannot be in your
Yes,
body.
yes.
And there's a physiological aspect to that too. There's no blood flow to that area. There's numbness in the body. So that emotional numbness and the physical numbness go hand in hand. And on the other hand, what I also recognized through my own experience, there's another part that the joint, the muscle function is not really great, the mind muscle function, because the joints are not working properly. So there's many aspects here that I'm peeling back layers on. But yeah, and how to bring the sensation back to the body has to happen in bite-sized pieces. It has to happen slow, because if we overwhelm the system, the nervous system, the body, then we are going backwards. So that takes a lot of training, how to recognize that through just observing clients, observing people, be very gentle, very careful. And society tries, and social media try to portray that, oh, lose 10 pounds in 1 month. I'm like, oh, that's not helping my job. Because it has to happen slowly. But yeah, I went off a little bit, but yeah, dissociation, bringing embodiment back into the body, that has to happen slowly. And as I'm talking about it, I'm noticing my glutes on the ground, am I crossing my legs? So just tiny little check-ins, very tiny. And people may think it doesn't mean much, it's not going to do much, but the work accumulates.
Yeah.
Even just one breath at a time, one little check-in at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that you connect and you become aware of your body, the better you're able to take care of it, which ultimately leads to greater health and potentially that weight loss. But that's an outcome that's a result of a better relationship with your body, not working it harder.
Ah, beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
The weight loss cannot be the goal. That can be you call it outcome, I call it byproduct.
Byproduct, yes.
But I like the outcome too. I like that. I'm really nervous around people who come to me. It doesn't happen often anymore that they want to lose weight, because most people understand that it cannot be the main goal. Yeah. And some people, I follow wonderful people on social media who have trainers, fitness people who have gained weight because they had to let go of the small body they were trying to chase.
I just had so many thoughts about that because because again, I look at everything through the nervous system lens, and when we are trying to force our body into a shape that is not the natural shape of our body, it creates hypervigilance because our body thinks that there's some kind of threat happening. Yes. And you can lose weight and you can be thinner, but your quality of life may not be as good as it would be if you had a healthier relationship to your body through mind-muscle connection.
Exactly.
So let's say I contact you and I'm like a perfectionist. I'm out there in the world. I'm working really hard and I don't take a lot of time for myself. And I'm like, okay, Gabi, I heard you're a really good personal trainer. I want to get in shape, but I have no clue that I have a body. How would you start with me?
Oh, I wouldn't take you on. I have to be honest, and that's something that I learned, that if someone comes to me and focuses on the personal training aspect, while I'm a personal trainer first and foremost, but if they don't understand that the trauma-informed aspect, the nervous system aspect, then there's a disconnect between them and I. There's a gap that I don't have capacity and time to fill that gap. And that I had to come to terms with it, because that's my own trauma, that I always wanted to, in the past, I wanted to fix people. I wanted to help everyone. I wanted to be the person who changes lives. And I do that, and I love doing that, but we have to be on the same page. The person has to have an understanding that they come to me because there's something deeper, that they need help. They understand that they, let's put this way, they have started their inner work, inner journey. So they have a certain level of understanding of nervous system regulation versus dysregulation. And that's very apparent when they fill out the form for booking a consultation. And when we are in the consultation, we are using very similar language. And that's how I know if someone comes to me, as you said, if that person were you, I would say, I don't think we are a good fit.
And where would you send them?
Again, the helper in me, I might find someone else for them, or maybe go to my trauma informed, or at least explore a little bit. Okay, but if I find someone else in the trauma informed personal training trainer community that would take it on, or I have many contacts. Yeah. So I don't know if, yeah, that's a very good question. I would want to help. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And I love what you're saying, because I know that like in the therapist community, we talk about this often in terms of like there needing to be a good fit, and then also that giving ourselves permission to set that boundary around who we can and cannot work with, and being really clear about that. And I think as most therapists are helpers, most of us are empaths and people pleasers, and that it's a hard thing. And it's also, I think, it's a really important boundary to hold, because to your point, as people who are out there in the world doing this work, if we're working with somebody who doesn't align, we're just wasting both of our
That's it.
time. Yeah. Yeah. So I love that you've learned to set that boundary for yourself and for others. That's really great. As you're working with folks, let's say people come to you because they want to be more embodied and because they want to work with somebody who's trauma informed and who's going to take them slow and help them connect. So, how do you conceptualize like that somebody is doing the work and moving along the path versus being stuck?
Ooh, that's a really good question. As a trainer, I want someone to have progression, but I need to put their needs first versus their wants. So ask me again. I need to hear this one more time.
I will try. And maybe I'll ask it in a little bit of a different way. How do you assess whether someone's on the right trajectory for what it is they need to be more embodied and move towards overall health?
I meet them where they are at, how to push them a little bit to have progression, but
Mhm.
not losing the side of healing.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And that has taken me quite some time to figure that out myself, because I had been stuck for so long. That's where I was operating from as a trauma informed personal trainer. I didn't know how much I could push my clients. And now, as I'm able to make progress myself, I'm not shying away from progression, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. I don't try to keep the client stuck. I'll see if, okay, let's see if we can progress, or we have to scale back and go back to what they know of. And I just came up with this package options. I'm really proud of it. It took me just a couple of years. That's my own inner work. Yeah. In the past, I offered 10, 12 session packages, and we were using up the sessions as they needed, weekly, bi-weekly sessions. Now I do bi-weekly sessions, weekly sessions, and twice a week sessions. So the client chooses the package based on what they need. And I came to terms with, okay, someone who wants twice a week, they need more hands-on. So the progression probably will be less, but they need my support, my constant or consistent support. So, versus someone who chooses the biweekly sessions, I can give them a lot more to work with on their own. We do the exercises together, they try them on, and they have a say to keep the exercise or no, or tools as we can call it as well. So that way, those people, the biweekly people, they need the emotional support to between sessions, how to tweak the program. And so that way it's really easy for me to see, I would say, someone who's more stuck and they need hands-on work, the twice a week sessions, and someone who has been doing the inner work for quite a long time or quite a while, they are quite independent. So I just wanted to jump a bit and share about that. But this is how I see. And stuckness is not a bad thing. It's a state. It's a layover.
It's a layover.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. Just noticing it, we all get stuck, and just noticing that we're stuck
Yeah.
is part of the process. And I'm really appreciating what you're saying about, and I like to think about it as those edges where when I do nervous system work, and I always talk to people, we want to push your nervous system right up to that edge where it's like stretching a little bit, but not so much that there's going to be like a counter constriction, that there's going to,
Yeah.
you're going to go fall over the edge into dysregulation. So it's really working with people to find that sweet spot where
Yeah.
you're growing, but you're not hurting yourself.
Yeah.
The process. Yeah, super important. What's one thing that somebody who's listening today could do, or maybe even share with a client, because a lot of the folks who listen are therapists, helpers, healers, to just start making that mind muscle connection? What's one simple thing you might tell somebody to do?
Very simple. I'm going to go back to connecting to the feet. That was probably one of the first things that my somatic therapist taught me. Just maybe not a muscle itself,
Yeah,
but just you're walking. Notice your shoes while you're walking and you're wearing your shoes. Or I love noticing my feet on the carpet at home because I have carpet everywhere. Or just notice the texture underneath your feet. And I was so disconnected. I had been disconnected from my feet so much. That's another trauma story I'm not going to get into. But as I'm connecting more, that I noticed that if I buy a new pair of socks and they're so comfy, I feel it. While in the past, I'm like, oh, whatever, socks. But technically, circling back, making it simple, feel your feet. And whatever that feels like, don't make anything out of it.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Gabi, as we start to wrap up, is there anything that we did not talk about today that you would like for people to hear?
One thing I always tell my clients, it's a hypothetical question, and I'm being silly, and I tell them, I love my job. That's my favorite line because it's important, and that goes back to the purpose.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Full circle. And you wouldn't be here doing this unless you had the life experience that you did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. True. As painful as they were, I'm grateful because the nervous system work really helped me to build resiliency. It wasn't a given.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very true. Thank you so much, Gabi, for being here. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go on my website, thetraumainformedpt.com, and they can book a consultation, read up on things, online classes, whatnot, and Instagram, because of my age. Instagram is my jam, the Trauma Informed PT.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll put all of that in the show notes so people can easily access them.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Jody. It was so wonderful to meet you.
It was so great to meet you too. Thanks, Gabi.
Thank you.